What happens when the forecasts go wrong? What happens? What are some real life scenarios? How do you get back on track? If these are questions that you are asking yourself right now, then this episode is for you. Hey, guys, and welcome to another episode of Tipsy Thursdays. I am your show host, Juanita Coley, the contact center whisperer, the CEO and founder of Solid Rock Consulting. I want to introduce to some and present to others. You probably already know Elsa. Elsa was our guest from last season's episode, and we had to bring her back. Elsa is a workforce management analyst. In this episode, we're talking all about workforce forecasts going wrong, the impacts, and how workforce management plays a critical role in that. Before we hop in, can you just take a moment to introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit more about your title and some of your experience in workforce management, specifically forecasting.
Hi, my name is Elsa Platania, and I have been in and around workforce management for the better part of 24 years. I've done various and sundry jobs. I've been a systems analyst. I've been a reports analyst. Workforce management, just as far as forecasting, I've always been on the, I want to say outside of it or user side of it. Rather than the implementer.
Yeah.
But I can absolutely speak to forecasting because working with the agents, working with operations, working with workforce management, IT, and the other departments, that forecasting layer is crucial. It's critical.
Something that you said just sparked a thought, right? And that thought was around how you are working with forecast and how that impacts IT, how it impacts the agents, how it impacts some of the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And I don't think that people always connect those dots, right? They think that if you are not the forecaster, then, or if you're not producing the forecast, then you don't understand the impacts of the forecast, when nothing can be further from the truth, right? When you are a scheduler, when you are RTA, whether you're operations manager, whether you're contact center leader, forecasting is going to have an impact, a direct impact on what you're doing day to day. I'm super excited to have you as a guest on this episode, Elsa, because one of the things that I want to hop right into is actually, can you share a time when the forecast you were involved in went wrong, and what were some of the circumstances around that, and what was the outcome?
Well, in a previous position, I was working RTA, and forecast was not inclusive of all the call queues. So we had a very difficult time with the agents because they were getting calls that, were highly elevated for the day.
Yeah.
So we were basically having to dig to find out, okay, why all of a sudden did we go from 100 calls to 500? What's going on? What's missing? Where do we need people? What do we need to do?
Right.
Having previously been a reports analyst and stuff, I was able to dig pretty quickly through a lot of the data, myself and several others. And we figured out very quickly that from the forecast portion, prior to the scheduling, there had been drops of data. In other words, it just disappeared. When we accounted for it, we were able to adjust for the rest of the week. Unfortunately, that day was lost.
Yeah.
We just couldn't schedule enough people. At that moment, it was a little chaotic. We were telling our agents, just hang in there. Do a good job. The calls were back to back to back to back.
I'm just thinking about that experience because that's a common story, right? That is a common thing. We're in this time right now of organizations talking about AI, and they're talking about how we can automate and how can we alleviate some of these interactions and all these different things. But if you can't even get to the source of truth of where your volume is coming from, if we're still dealing with these type of things in 2025, how are you going to account for the calls you're trying to alleviate? Hey, are you ready to identify how well your workforce management strategies align to your CX, customer experience, EX, employee experience, or your business profitability goals? Well, take our free 5-minute assessment at WFMGoBeyondScore.com and get your personalized results and recommendations delivered directly to your inbox. WFMGoBeyondScore.com. See you there. In the scenario that you gave where, and this is very common, I see this in organizations all the time where they're like, why are we missing forecasts? Why are our agents over in it? And we start to dig and we realize, oh, it didn't include this skill, or it didn't include this queue, or it didn't include the forecast. And so we were understaffed. But not only that, we have this initiative. Oh, Elsa, you about to make me go to church, right? We have this initiative, right, to bring AI into our organizations. But how do we bring AI into our organizations when the data is bad? Exactly. We have a gap on our data then, and we're saying, oh, I want to be, operate more efficiently, and I want to have this agent assist AI. I want to have this wrap up bot. I want to have all, but you're not looking at where you're missing 3 queues. You're missing 5 queues. You're missing these important pieces of data that's going to help you inform your strategy around AI.
The whole AI initiative is when you take out the human element and you take out the ability to flex and, cognitively think, okay, where do I need to look next? What could possibly be missing? What else do I need to do? Does AI do that? And I don't think at this particular point in our development that it does.
Yeah.
Would not know that, last year we didn't have those 3 queues, so we need to develop those 3. Where is the logic? Where is the human touch?
Right.
It bothers me that everybody is jumping on that bandwagon without thinking, okay, we could be missing something.
And I have to be honest, right? I am an AI lover, right? I love AI. I love technology. It's probably not a day that goes by that I'm honestly not using AI, right? I'm using it every day in my day-to-day work and how I'm working with customers and how I'm working internally inside of our organization. So I'm using it every day. So it's not the point that shouldn't be using AI. But to your point around when the forecast went wrong, you and the team were able to start to say, okay, why are we were expecting to get 100 calls. We got 500 calls. What's this deviance of this 400 calls? Where did these calls come from? Backtrack. Oh, it was these queues that did not get included in the forecast. So now let's reforecast, include those 500 extra calls or these skills or whatever is going to make the volume or truer to reality. And then now what's the next step? We probably going to need to recruit extra hours or overtime for this week anyway, until next week we can shift the schedules or whatever the case may need to be to align. We've been using this book all year long, WFM Go Beyond. In earlier episodes this year, we've been talking about data and your points of truth. And so I think that this episode around forecasting and forecasting fails is so important because unless we look at our data, right? So if you haven't checked out those episodes, make sure you go back and check out those episodes from earlier this year. But unless we look at our data, we're going to continue to have forecast fails, even when we pull in AI. So I think that that's super important. I love that you honed in on that topic, Elsa. Next question.
I'm not a technophobe by any means. I love the new development. I just don't think we've developed far enough to be able to eliminate the human factor.
Yeah.
I hope we don't, but
yeah, I don't think that we will, right? I don't think that, at least from the conversations that I'm having and the vendors, suppliers, even leaders that I'm talking to, I don't think the goal is to eliminate the human touch. I think it's to augment the human touch, right? And allow us as humans to move faster, quicker, better, more efficiently. And I think we just have to have a very strategic approach to that, because if done well, it has tremendous impacts that it can make. If done poorly, it has impacts that it can make as well, right?
Absolutely.
Another question I have for you about forecasts gone wrong, right? So while we're on this topic around forecasts going wrong, when the forecast went wrong, you told me how you guys kind of looked into, oh, it's missing the cue. And so you dug into the data. But then how did you navigate the fallout of that? Like, how did you get back? Because you said that day was lost. But the next day and the days after, what was the experience the following days? How did you navigate the fallout of forecast?
Well, we did have to implement OT hours for the agents who were not scheduled for those specific days. We did rerun the forecast and find out that, yes, in the upcoming weeks, this is what is now expected. It was pretty much all hands on deck. Just optimizing lunches and breaks and making sure that there were no team meetings happening during that time, because we had to account for every minute,
right,
of the agent's 8-hour shift.
How did that impact the agent experience, right? Because I find that many times organizations think that, oh, we're just going to reforecast, or we're going to fix the mistake, right, of not including the cues. So we're going to reforecast. But can you talk a little bit to me about how that then impacted? What was the trickle down effect, right? Like of, oh, we got to schedule overtime, or we got to take off meetings that were on the books or coachings that were on the books. How did that impact the employee experience on the flip side of fixing the mistake?
Well, going down the scale there, you had the supervisors who were unable to really coach their agents. They might have pulled their agents off for 5 minutes or so, and we were right on it because we need these people on the phones. The agents during that time period, if I'm remembering correctly, a lot of times people were taking extra breaks, extended lunches. A lot of the people that I was working with, of course, were remote workers. So it's not like you have a call center where the supervisor can see, okay, they went to the restroom, or they went there. When people are working at home, they can go to their kitchen and start cooking dinner and, just disappear. It makes for a very difficult time, and it does have, serious impacts on the way down. After that, I do believe it was a few weeks later, we started seeing some attrition, people burn out, because that can happen as well. So, it does go back to the forecasting. If we were forecasted better and we knew in advance that, we needed X amount of bodies, we could have gone to a hiring process, hired enough people to, by the time the weeks out forecast, we could have had enough people in place so that the burden wouldn't have been on the core group of people that we already had established. If we knew that we were going to have higher volumes.
Hey, transformative leader, listen, have you grabbed your copy of WFM Go Beyond? Go and grab your copy at WFMGoBeyond.com. WFM Go Beyond is sectioned into 2 sections. Section 1 is the foundation and the fundamentals of workforce management. The core 4, you've heard me talk about this: data gathering, forecasting, scheduling, intraday. But section 2 is the part that I get super excited about, especially for 2025, because we are pushing and encouraging and challenging leaders to go beyond and push into transformative impact. And section 2 is going to do that to help you understand how you tie your WFM strategy into your CX initiatives, your EX initiatives, and business profitability goals. So if you're an operational leader, executive, a WFM leader that has a operations efficiency goal, okay, and you want to drive transformative impacts, WFM Go Beyond is your resource. So go to WFMGoBeyond.com and grab your copy today. Bye. That's so critical, right? We don't all the time, we don't always think about how data impacts our forecasts, and how our forecasts impact our schedules, and how our schedules impact the agents' lives, and how the agents then begin to exhibit certain behaviors that are not just agent behaviors, by the way, they're human behaviors. So Let's not make this I think in the contact center, we talk about employee experience and agent behaviors and customer experience, when what we really should be talking about is the human experience, because this is this is not indicative or to just the agent. This is how people respond when they are burnt out and when they are overwhelmed. We begin to say, okay, I need to take a step back. Having a forecast go wrong can mean impacts to not only the customer experience, as we already know, but to the human element of the agent experience. And go, like you say, you saw them taking extra breaks and all the different things where they normally wouldn't have done because they would have had a break between the calls. So they wouldn't have taken an extra break or unplugged the phone and said they had system issues or all the different things that we know happen in contact centers. And so I think that that's super important that we, one, identify what happened when we're talking about forecasts going wrong, but what are the downstream impacts to forecasts going wrong?
Oh, that's, business wise.
Yeah.
It impacts the business horribly. Yeah. You have people on the clock, a lot of times on the clock because breaks are paid, eating hours. You have your customers not getting the services that they need. You have frustrated supervisors who, just don't know what they're going to do next because they're just going to leave. And then you have to train up people.
Yeah, it contributes to attrition.
There's just so much. It impacts so many levels. Operations managers who get frustrated with their supervisors, who get frustrated with their agents. It's a snowball effect. And it can all go back to bad data.
Yeah.
Just
absolutely.
Bad data. Or no data.
Or no data.
If a company's new and they don't have last year's call volumes, what are you going to do? You're going to guesstimate for an entire year until you get some solid data. So that can be very impactful on the company as well.
So amazing. Like, Elsa, you had so many amazing, I'm just thinking and I'm playing back in my head some of the things that you said that were absolutely chef's kiss, that I think that we have to dig more into and around these forecasts that are going wrong. Because again, we think that, which is what the book is about, right? The WFM Go Beyond, the book is about not only how you do the tactical thing of forecasting, right? But how do we go beyond that? And we dig into some of these deeper or things that are impact of or outcomes of forecasts, outcomes of scheduling, outcomes of intraday. And I think that is what we really want the audience to walk away with, is understanding those things.
When you're talking about forecasting, if you're forecasting out for, let's say, 2 months, and you know that there's going to be a glut of calls, well, you forecast for the year, but in 2 months' time, you're going to start seeing a rise on those calls. HR has to get involved. We have to, hire people. We have to be prepared, because if we're not prepared for it, then we're going to run into a lot of the problems you have, even if you don't have data.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. That was so absolutely amazing. We talked about forecasts gone wrong, right? What I want you to do, if you have yet to do this, I want you to go to WFM Go Beyond score to get your WFM Go Beyond score, to think about this score will help you understand where you are in WFM maturity in these different areas, right? Of forecasting, scheduling, intraday, data, all of these different areas, so that you can go beyond. Because something that Elsa shared that I think was super impactful was around the downstream, right? The trickle down impacts around forecasting. Many times we focus on just the forecast. Are we within 3%? Are we within 5%, right? We focus on that margin of error or accuracy so much that we don't think about what is the impacts that forecast makes. And when the forecast goes wrong, okay, why did it go wrong? Did it go wrong because we just didn't do a good job at forecasting? Or did it go wrong because we were missing data? Data was incomplete. And how do we then make sure that that doesn't happen again? So again, she talked about how forecasting impacts attrition and how people are getting burnt out. So she talked about some real life scenarios that I think was super important that you can take even from this episode and start to look inside of your organization and start to say, okay, how are our forecasts impacting our attrition rate? How are we looking at our forecasts to think about capacity planning? Are we working with HR to say, okay, we know we have this peak that comes up every September. How far in advance do we need to be getting a request over to HR so that they can recruit in time, so that we can ramp in time for September? It's all these different things that we need to be considering as workforce management leaders and operational leaders that are going to help us not only do the tactical work, but go beyond and be transformative leaders. You already know what to do. Thank you so much for coming and tuning into this episode. You know what to do. Go be great and let's make impact. See you guys soon. Bye.